So one of the things I have been teaching all parents is you need to be that advocate for your kid. And to do that, you have to be that parent. You have to be that parent that is very passionate about your kid. I'm not saying yelling and screaming at administrators is ever a good thing, but you need to be an advocate and tell everybody exactly what your kid needs. You know more than anybody. But the hardest part is when you start this journey, you're probably in denial. Call it you're probably not quite sure what's going on, you know there's something up, and you sometimes turn to a teacher who's very limited on what they're allowed to say, or number two, they're a general ed teacher and they've never actually seen these specific issues before because they have no training. And even some of the special ed teachers have a hard time because, like, my daughter had development coordination disorder, and to be honest, no special ed teacher I've ever met actually knows what that is. It's one of those things where if you have something that's not quite normal or simple, like, not that autism is simple, but it's easier to diagnose autism than it is something that's more rare. So you have to be that advocate. You have to talk out. So I put a PowerPoint slide together, a pretty how-to thing that we'll go through a little bit as we're going. So the first one just says, welcome to all the parents. You can go to the next slide. And ultimately, we just have some. So the whole point of creating this community is really to get information out to the parents. And these parents are super busy, so it's going to be hard to get information. So we're going to try to use social media as much as possible, get these videos out to as many people as possible. I have a hard time. I actually run a special needs group for my company also. I'm one of 4 leaders of my company that are leading this group. And it's hard to get the parents even to come at lunchtime and spend that hour because that hour is their time to look on the internet, schedule appointments for their kids and stuff like that. You know, they don't have extra time. And sadly, 50% of marriages fail in the special ed because of their kids and issues that cause problems. So then a lot of times they're single parents. Single parents don't have the time to come to meetings any day it is because it's hard there. So we need to get this information out to them. So ultimately, we're trying to do is just help all. You know, parents, grandparents, any caregivers. You know, a lot of times, unfortunately, for whatever reason, the parents aren't in the picture. You know, and these kids sadly have been dumped on to somebody else who has to take that role on, and they're even less equipped, have less time to focus on these kids. But the biggest problem we have here is people who have money to pay for advocates and lawyers may be able to get the help they need, but those who can't afford advocates can't afford lawyers. But what we're here saying is that there's actually 2 lawyers that pro bono for completely free, not a single dollar, will help you fight the district and get the support you need. Now, they're not going to fight the things that your kid doesn't need. They're going to fight for the things your kid does need. So you might have some, you know, back and forth what your actual kid needs. Because to be honest, I had no clue what my daughter needs. My daughter, again, was autistic. She didn't present as a typical autistic. Our first assessments, she got a not autistic assessment and diagnosis, and we high-fived each other. Like, yeah, she doesn't have autism because I don't want to label my kid. And then they told us you get nothing. Nothing. You don't get any medical help. You don't get any help in the school. You get 0 regional center. You get nothing. Not a single thing. So then you're like, wow, I have to label my kid to get her help. And then you spend another year, 2, 3, 10 trying to get your kid labeled. Isn't that horrible? Like, who wants to label a kid? But the only way you get the support. And to be honest, to get everything you need, they actually have to be autistic. Even ADHD doesn't qualify for a lot of the supports. Even though, to be honest, sometimes ADHD kids have more things that need to be addressed. I'm not saying they're lesser at all, because these kids are usually actually, I think it's 44% of them are actually smarter than the average. 25% are average or a little bit above, and then the rest are below. Well, if we add those 2 numbers together, that's a huge percentage that are smart or smarter than the average kid. So these kids aren't dumb, and the hard part is we think of special needs being those kids who are very severely mentally handicapped. But it's not these kids. These kids just need to be, like Paulette said, need to be taught differently. The problem is finding a good teacher that actually knows how to do that. Right? We have a lot of teachers that are, you know, really awesome. We have a lot of teachers that are just been beaten down by the system, aren't as passionate as maybe they were at one point. And so for us, parents, we got to find that right match for the teacher. And if you do have a one-on-one at some point, you do need to get that right match for the one-on-ones. The problem is the revolving door, especially in Chino Valley, because they pay horribly. And we'll talk about that in a minute. They pay horribly. There's huge turnover. So my daughter has had, I think, 6 different aides this year. they're getting 6 different aides. I didn't even know her aide changed sometimes, right? And so like, I'm like, who's this person bringing my daughter out to me to pick up at the end of the day? And a lot of the parents, they use the busing system, right? So they have their kid go on the bus to school and the bus home. So they never interact with the teacher. They never interact with the aide. They have no idea that the aide changed. There's no communication. So one of the things we're talking about is transparency. There needs to be communication to the parent. Number one thing that we asked for was communication plan. Problem is, you can ask for a plan, you can ask for a communication log, but it doesn't mean that you're actually going to do it. And it doesn't mean they're going to fill it out with the proper things. So case in point, at Glen Mead, my daughter was allowed to lie down on the ground all day, do absolutely nothing, refuse every single service, OT, speech, APE, refused to do anything. And at the end of the day, we'd ask, did Emily have a good day? Yeah, she had a great day. She was great today. Did great. Only because one of the substitute teachers told us that, well, you realize a good day for her is lying down on the ground. Do we have any clue? So the IAP meeting that we called, emergency IAP meeting that we called, that was probably like the 3rd one we had for the year already, nobody would look at us. Everybody at the table, the teacher, all the aides don't get to come to it, so it's the teacher, the OT, speech, AP, they all look down. None of them would look us in the face. They all looked straight down at the floor. They'd answer a question and they look back down. The AP teacher literally walked out of our meeting and said, she'd say, I'm sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Butscher, I did your daughter a disservice and I'm leaving. And she walked out. I asked, is that allowed to? So, unfortunately, I had an advocate at that point who was a screamer and yeller, so he just went off and started screaming. I had to call him, I had to call my own advocate down, which is crazy, because I was already escalated, right? So I had to take him out of the room, tell him to calm down. He's never had that bad of a meeting before. He was clearly upset. And so we calmed him down and went back in there, and basically we realized at that point we had to switch schools. Like we had to. We needed to switch schools like right then. The other thing that happened is my daughter was found about 20 feet away from the front open gate. My dad came, he thought it was I told him it was a minimum day, it wasn't a minimum day. My dad comes and sees Emily just wandering around 20 feet from the front open gate. And my dad's like, hey Emily, where's your teacher? Is it a minimum day today? She goes, looks at him and goes like, no, and just daughter's wandering around. So he takes her by hand, like, let's go get your backpack and go home. She's like, okay. And find out basically the yard duties had not really been paying attention to her and she's been eloping, and this was history. Never communicated to us at all, not even once told to us whatsoever. So fast forward, we had 3 advocates. One advocate didn't have enough time for me. The other advocate yelled and screamed at everybody and was not helpful. And the last one was awesome. Dr. Elena Watson really gets it. Dr. Elena Watson has been basically a special ed director and been a special ed teacher. She's been she's done pretty much all of the roles. So she can work with you and get all the information. She'll get everything from you. She'll literally like interview you and get everything you ever had a problem, like from birth all the way up with your child, and then help you to make a educated decision on what you should do next. Because she knows, she's been in thousands of IAP meetings, not hundreds, she's been in thousands of IAP meetings. So she understands what the verbiage to use. So advocates basically let you get to that a little bit faster. Now what lawyers do is eventually fight for what exactly you need. So once you figure out what you need, you're going to have to go to the lawyer age. So if you want a one-on-one in Chino Valley, you have to get over the training. You have to. They're free. For people who have some money, $1,000 retainer, and then when you win, and trust me, you'll win, because even if you win on just extra OT, you win and you settle, and then they can take your lawyer. Right? You don't have to settle on all of it. You could just settle for a little OT and a little of something else, and then your lawyer gets completely paid by the district, and then you can turn around and do what? Because ultimately what they'll end up doing is not actually doing your settlement, and because most cases of parents I've told have actually gone and settled the district then didn't actually do what they're supposed to. It means breaks your contract, which means that you can tell everybody what your settlement was, and you can also go back and fight for the same thing again, because they broke the contract. Now, if they didn't break the contract, then the worst thing you end up with is more OT for your son or daughter. Doesn't seem like it's that bad. Let's skip to the next slide. So ultimately, we're trying to help everybody. So we have, basically, we have a website, CV for Chino Valley, SNN for specialneedsnetwork.com. We have a private Facebook group for those people who don't want everything on the internet. And then we do have an email address so people can email questions and stuff like that. Now remember, we're not paid people, so it may take us a little bit to get back to you, but in general it's about us sharing information to different parents. And I'm assuming we're gonna get a lot of new parents that are like, I don't know what's wrong with my kid. I can't assess your kid. I'm not an assessment person. But I have a great resource list with people who will do assessments. If you have medical insurance, then you have your medical insurance to go through. If you don't have medical insurance, then you should go to the regional center. They do assessments for completely free. That's a good option. Or, of course, pay out of pocket, like Paulette talked about. You know, there's great places you can take them. We have a good list. Dr. Gunn, who's in Rancho Cucamonga, does a great job and referred by a bunch of different groups, and he's on the list too. Let's skip to the next slide. So ultimately, the whole point is, why do we need advocates and attorneys? I think I already kind of explained this one. Ultimately, if you need somebody to fast track your knowledge, advocate. If you need somebody to actually get the one-on-one aid or the additional services you need because you've tried literally everything, you've had 20 IEP meetings, you've had one a month since the beginning of the school year, that's us. I mean, I'll be very straight, like, that's us. We literally had IEP meeting like almost every month because we're like, nothing's getting addressed, like we need to address that. And you have the rights. They literally hand you a big piece of paper with all the things in it. You don't read it, but if you read it, it says you can literally call an IEP meeting every single day, every single month. Now they have to 30 days to get everybody together and stuff like that. The one tip is you don't have to have everybody there. You can literally just have a meeting with the assistant principal or the principal and then the teacher. You could just have an IEP meeting with 2 people. Now, and that is the IEP team when you call that meeting like that, and they can make decisions. You don't have to have 20 people in your IEP meeting. It could just be the principal, the teacher, you, your wife, your advocate, grandma, grandpa, your neighbor, anybody can do this. But we need to get people to understand that. Now, when you go to the attorney level, you gotta be serious, but also, sadly, it's the only way. And what one of my advocates told me was that all the districts came together at a meeting and found out the best way to save money is to say no. N-O to everybody. And they said basically, they realized, and they said this in the meeting, they realized that people were less well off, wouldn't be able to pay for their advocates and attorneys, so they'd save a lot of money there. But the people who did have money would get advocates and lawyers, and then they'd have to do something. So those people they'd help. Wow, they're gonna help the people who have money. Now, I'm lucky to be able to afford $1,000 for an attorney, but could I afford an attorney like 3 times like one mom I was talking to that took out a loan so that she could pay for that attorney? No. Now these attorneys are free. There's gonna be some costs here and there. Like nothing's completely free. But in general, if you pay $1,000 now, and then your kid can basically really get an actual job and work it when they're 24 years old, that $1,000 way back when, it's gonna seem like the cheapest thing you've ever paid in your entire life. But the hard part is parents don't know this. And how would you know this? Nobody tells you. There's no website about this that I've ever seen. I've seen some about, hiring an attorney, but I think it's explaining why you need to hire an attorney, right? It's like, there's an attorney, okay, what do I do with it? Like, why do I need to call an attorney? Or maybe they don't realize what's going on. They really don't. You have the full right to go and to observe your classroom. Now, the hard part of observing a classroom, or when you're observing a new classroom, one big tip is, look around to see if anybody's missing. The first question you should ask when you go see another classroom is, who's missing today? We went and saw a classroom, my wife is literally smiling and laughing, where we went in and there were 4 kids missing. 4 kids missing that day. Magically on the day that we're going to go see that place. And we proceeded to ask the program specialist, what were these kids that were trouble kids? And we got the answer of, yes, that's why they're not here. Now, that program specialist could have been completely fired. I'm not going to say who it was because they don't actually work for the district anymore. But in general, they told me something that was very pertinent. They literally pulled 4 kids out of that so that we wouldn't see how bad that classroom was. Now, these are the games they play to make you go, oh, this is a great place. And then you send your kid on the bus, and you have your kid come back on the bus. You never get to talk to the teacher. You never get to talk to the aides. And your kid is literally not getting the supports they need. But you don't know that. And so you need to ask questions. Communication plans. Love communication plans, but they gotta fill them out. Like, we have a communication plan, she's laughing again. Because literally, like, they don't fill it out, or they literally just mark okay all the time. Or they mark both, which I don't understand what the hell that means. They had a good and bad day. I need some comments here that talks about what the bad part was and what the good part was, because like, marking both circles doesn't really tell me. Did she have a major meltdown? Did she hit the crap out of another kid? Like, what exactly happened? There had to be something that you marked bad or not good. All right, let's skip to the next slide. So ultimately, the agenda ultimately was this, to talk about the big issues, what we know, individual attention's really needed, advocates, open questions. So let's go to the next slide. We'll talk about the big issues. What are the big issues? I think I talked about 10,000 already. The big issues. So the big thing is safety. I kind of already talked a little bit about that. Proper supports and proper training. So what are we actually asking for? Like, as a parent community, other than educating the parents on what rights they actually have, because they give you a piece of paper that says it, but nobody really understands it. It's all legalese. I don't understand it. I read it like a bunch of times, like, my advocate knows it. Like, get an advocate. Ensure safety. So the big thing is, we need to make sure that the kids are properly supported. So here's a scenario that happened at Butcher Ranch, where a child was not supported. So the kid is basically crying out for help. Now, there's crying out for help in different ways. There's crying out for help by basically, completely shutting down and sitting at their desk and doing nothing, not even grabbing a pencil. That actually is crying out for help. Then there is actually crying out for help, as in screaming, yelling, throwing things. Those kids are not acting up because they're bad kids. Those kids are acting out because they're like, help me, please, please, for the love of God, help me. Not, I'm a bad kid and I have a bad mom. You've all been in Target, Walmart, wherever, seen that kid lie on the ground screaming their bloody head off. And most parents will look at that kid and go, what a crappy mom, crappy dad. I wonder what they did to that kid. And then you fast forward to your own special ed kid, and you're in the middle of Target, they're having a meltdown. You're sitting there on the verge of tears or crying, going like, what the heck's wrong with my kid? Like, I just wanted them to go home. I just asked them if we can please leave. And they literally just had a meltdown for like an hour, 2 hours, and to the point where like they're asking me to leave the store. Now, fast forward, and you're doing this to a 24-year-old adult, right? So if you don't handle it when they're younger, you're gonna end up with a 24-year-old adult. And even if you do everything in the kitchen sink and you do it, you might still have a 24-year-old adult that does this. Because they aren't able to handle the lights in the place, the sound in the place. There's a lot of things where, kids and adults can't handle these things, so we need to help them. Proper support for students. So one-on-one aids, not everybody needs a one-on-one aid. We need to be realistic. I think everybody just jumps, one-on-one aid, we need them. If you actually have like a good classroom, like a special day class, where you have a teacher, you have a couple aides, and aides are good, you can have a good setting. And the problem is one-on-one aides, they're awesome, but you can also become completely dependent on them. So this is the thing they'll tell you in every single meeting, right? Where they're like, you don't need a one-on-one, because you get a one-on-one, then they'll be completely dependent on them. Yes and no. Good one-on-one aides that are trained, which is why we're asking for training, are gonna see that difference there. So what we have for Emily had 4 different aides this year, most of them not trained. So we had a mixture. One aide would be like pushing her to make sure that she's doing the work. The other one would do all the work for her. All the work for her, right? And so what's that teaching her? She's not doing any of the work. And the other one was a mixture of both. Push her a little bit, help her a little bit. And that's kind of probably where you want, but you want somebody, really what you want somebody who's gonna energize them. So there was a conversation I had before this with a couple individuals, and the big thing is with these kids, getting up and moving, getting up and doing stuff. They cannot sit there all day like the regular kids and be completely quiet and not cause a disruption or do anything. So they either cause a disruption or they sit there and do nothing. My daughter would literally sit there in her chair, not doing anything. Then eventually she'd get bored and start tapping on something. Then she might pull something out and start playing with it. Then she'd end up on the floor lying down eventually because she was bored. The last thing is provide training. Now, training for the general ed teachers. These general ed teachers, most of these kids get diagnosed in kindergarten or 1st grade. General ed teachers have no clue about autism, ADHD, any of these things. They have no clue. Parents have no clue. They say go see a medical doctor. Our pediatrician knew nothing about autism. He literally said it straight to me. He knew nothing about autism. So we have a doctor who doesn't know about autism. We have a teacher who knows nothing about autism. We have parents who don't know about autism. Where the hell do you learn this? So thank God for the internet. There's awesome videos on YouTube that I've met and seen and watched. There's great books. There's a great book for girls that have autism actually too that I just bought and haven't read yet, but I heard it's good. But in general, it was just how girls are so different than boys. Boys are hyperactive, running around. Girls are usually typically, and sometimes the sex changes, basically where it's the flip. But in general. So we need more training, not just for GED teachers, for all of the aides. Now the problem is this district, literally on record, in their board meetings, they asked the head of the training department, why don't we train the aides? And they literally said, because we pay not the greatest, there's high turnover, and since there's high turnover, we don't train them because by the time we train them, they leave. And you're like, sounds like there's a problem here, and you're solving it by not doing anything. Instead of maybe, I don't know, paying the aides better. So literally there's an aide shortage in the entire district right now. So they hire an outside company, which they hate because they have to pay more money. Maybe they should just raise the rate for everybody and actually train them and make it a fun place to work and they'll stay. That's what we're doing with millennials nowadays, right? We basically, make it a fun place for them to work and support them. That seemed to work for a lot of other places. Maybe we should do the same thing here. Oh wait, but we don't have any money. But wait, you get a bunch of money for special ed, and you spend that money on lawsuits instead of helping the kids? Wait, I'm confused here. Where should we spend the money? Up front or in lawsuits? I'd rather spend the money up front. Let's flip to the next slide. Because I like to talk really ever and then be here forever. So what do we get? And this is actually good information that Seth put this together with me, and I really like this. The big thing is diagnose early. So the earlier you're diagnosed, the earlier you get that label, which means that you get supports. Now, nobody wants to label their kids, so everybody fights to not label their kids. And you come to realization, sadly, sometimes not until they're 20 years old. At my work, unfortunately, there was literally a mom who came in tears. Her now ex-husband refused to let her assess her son because he didn't want anybody to think less of him. It was a very cultural thing. I'm not going to talk about what the culture was, but it was a very cultural family origin type thing where he was a very macho man who didn't want his kid to be different. So she listened to him and didn't get assessed until he was 24 years old. His first assessment for anything was 24 years old. He went through school, did horrible, didn't have a career, didn't have any guidance in his life. Got him assessed, figured out he had ADHD, was in a therapist, and was already doing good after 6 months. He was holding down his first job after 6 months. So think of what happened. That same kid, rewind, would have gotten when he was 4 or 5 years old, kindergarten, first grade. Fast forward, how awesome would that kid have been? Because in 6 months when he was an adult, which is hard, it's hard to change people when you get old. It's hard for me to change. I'm in my 40s, it's not easy for me to change. You have a kid when they're young, you can change them easier. When you have a kid who's older, like 24, it's gonna be a little bit harder to change their ways. This kid in 6 months was able to finally hold down a job for the first time. Inclusion creates ambition. The big thing is you want the kids to be around kids that are better off than them. We stick them in these kids. So my daughter is fortunately in a moderate to severe class because there's no mild autism class in the school district. So unfortunately, she's with kids that basically are barely verbal, hitting, kicking, touching themselves inappropriately, things that you don't really want a girl definitely to be around, mostly boys, because she's the only girl. And the problem is, I need her to be in a smaller classroom with more aides and more supports. So I have to go through that. Basically, the big thing is individual attention maximize results. These kids, especially with ADHD, all they're asking for is help. They're like, look at me, look at me, look at me. Well, if you stop looking at them, guess what they start doing? Picking up things and throwing them. Because you're only looking at them when they're doing bad things. Wouldn't it be nice to have more one-on-one attention for the positive things? And that's what PBIS is, positive behavior, right? PBIS, which all the districts are doing, positive behavior. How do you have positive behavior for these kids when there's no supports there to help them? Special needs is 13% of the students. I don't know if it's higher or lower or whatever, but in general, 1 in 59 has autism. ADHD doesn't have numbers, but if I look at my small Saturn of literally where I live, next door neighbor, ADHD. Across the way from that person, ADHD. My daughter has autism, and then the person across from me doesn't. Their kids are grown and away, and so that's just my little area. There's already 3 kids that are affected. So the percentages may be higher, may be lower, but in general, who cares? Let's help these kids, right? They're high. They're high. So every classroom has at least one. So if you look at the statistics, at least one that has autism or has ADHD or has something else, dyslexia, right? So we're talking about there's minor. I mean, everything affects these kids, right? I always feel bad. I think there's a lot of special ed parents want to say, my kid's worse than your kid. I don't know why this is a fight. It should just be let's help the kids. But if you go on any forum out there, it's always my kid's worse than your kid. Who cares? Who cares? This is not a competition. It is a competition because we're all fighting for the same resources. I think is what forces this. But at some point, IEP, individual education plan, individual. You fight. You be that parent. Kids need advocates for them. So we can be the advocates. You can hire an advocate. You can hire lawyers. But in general, a new parent has no clue what's going on. And you're asking all your neurotypical friends who've never ever seen this, and they're basically like, why is your kid having a meltdown? I have no clue. Well, you're a horrible parent because you don't know. I didn't know my kid had autism. I didn't know that was a thing. How was I supposed to magically know this? Well, your doctor should have known. My doctor literally told me he knew nothing about autism. Right? So we have to get to the right things. Let's flip to the next slide. Next slide. So ultimately, they need to have this attention. And I think we talked a lot about this already, but let's just flip to the next slide. We already talked a lot about this. They just need individual attention. I like that. Good thing. So making sure that a student feels cared for is integral to creating a successful adult. So ultimately, people in general, especially kids, need to know that somebody loves them. So I know one of the always thinking of parenting, they always say, when you admonish a kid, you should also go back and say, I'm sorry that I got so angry with you. I love you. I care about you. The only reason why I screamed at you is because I love you and I care about you. That, you have to do that positive affirmation afterwards, because if not, that kid feels like crap. Because you probably said words that you didn't mean. But now with these kids, it's even worse off, because they don't have no clue. They have no idea what their emotions are. They have no idea why these feelings are coming up. Especially teenagers. Teenagers are very, they have no clue. They just all of a sudden but they have no clue. They're not sure what triggered them. And then once you calm them down after the fact, they usually can figure out what the trigger is. But if you don't have that conversation afterwards, I'm sorry, that I yelled at you, I'm calm now, I love you, I care about you, let's talk about what's going on. These kids need even more. My wife actually went to collaborative problem solving, which a lot of the collaborative problem solving, which is separate than ABA, is all about working with the kid to figure out what's really going on. The problem is you can't do it in the heat of emotion. Well, why do you feel that way? Why do you feel that way? My mom does this all this. We tease because my mom does this to me all the time. It's she's asked the same question repeatedly over and over, and you're like, I already said that, I don't know. Do you think I'm actually going to figure it out in 5 seconds that you just asked me the question? No, you have to give it time. But as a parent, I want the answer. Give it to me. Give it to me. All right, let's flip to the next slide. I don't know how many more slides I have. So advocate for your kids. Advocate, yeah. Next slide. This will be way more exciting when you actually see it run through and this whatever. So ultimately, we need more aid and assistance. The big thing, and this is where Seth definitely wants to touch upon at some point, is these aides get paid horribly. One example is one of his awesome, amazing friends only made $18,000 a year after 20 years of working as an aide. $18,000. What can you afford for $18,000? If you're a single parent, there's no way. You'd have to have a second income. There's no way. I don't think you can afford to eat alone with no rent with $18,000 and a couple of kids, right? There's just no way. And the same thing happens with home ABA. The home ABA therapist that comes to the home, they get paid horribly. The supervisors make more money, but still not that much more. Maybe $30,000 a year. I'm sorry, $30,000 in California is not good money. And I'm not trying to be elitist or anything. I'm just trying to be realist. You need to be able to pay for rent, and you need to be able to eat. And you need a vehicle. You need a vehicle because these jobs are not ones where you can take private transportation most of the time, right? So another thing is we need need to require them to be certified, and the more reason is because then we can pay them more. And also because we need better people. We need people who, like BCVA, which is actual certification in behavioral supports. Basically, what people would have an issue with labeled behavior, right? But behavior just means like you don't consistently go to the restroom and do all the right steps. You don't brush your teeth and do the right steps. That's behavior. Behavior doesn't mean I pick this thing up and smack somebody in the head with it. Behavior means you need to be trained to a point where you need to be able to do living, normal day-to-day things. But behavior, a lot of times we hear behavioral problems. Well, if you read West End Selva's website, they literally have an emergency behavioral issue on there, where they literally require everybody to call an IEP within 2 days. So if a kid throws something, hits and kicks, causes a major violent issue, within 2 days you're supposed to have an IEP. Have you ever been in a district and seen that actually implemented? It's a requirement. The superintendents agree to it. All the superintendents of all the schools around here agree to it. Have you ever seen that happen? No. We need to provide training. We talk about that a lot, I think, but it's basically we're just not training where this is what autism looks like. It's more of, you have this kid, he's having a meltdown. You have this girl who's not interactive. How do you get them engaged? How do you get them engaged? How do you get them redirected? I always tell about this story where my wife was outside in front of everybody was lined up in their lines for the classes. This kid got made fun of by 2 girls, so their fault completely. Now, with following that, not their fault. He started hitting, punching, kicking every single kid in the line. He went down the line and hit and kicked every single one. Then he proceeded to start spitting at every single one. Now, you're like, what the hell? Like, where the hell are the teachers? Well, this is before school. The bell hasn't rung yet. Now, the aide comes out, makes eye contact with this kid, and says his name, points to the wall. The kid stops immediately what he's doing and walks over to the wall. She walks over. He immediately apologizes and says he won't do it again. But that aide, not even a teacher, this is the aide. That was not an aide for the classroom. It wasn't even his aide. It was just an aide for the classroom. Within 5 seconds, 10 seconds, he was calmed down really good. Like, that's how amazing aides are. Aides are amazing. But that's an aide that ended up retiring that year in the middle of the year, which is horrible because the next one that came in had no clue what she was doing and literally sat across the room. He's over there punching somebody and she's over here. I go up to her and say, hey, aren't you his one-on-one? Shouldn't you be over there stopping that kid? She's like, I don't get paid enough for this. And I was like, then quit, please. Because clearly that kid needs more support than what you're giving him. Please. Next slide. By the way, that's Rosa. I just named her Rosa just for fun because I needed a name for her. So ultimately, this is a big thing that Seth's been looking into, ultimately, where there is a surplus of money. So they keep on talking about there's not enough money. Well, number one, there's money for lawsuits, because they've been paying out left and right for lawsuits. So wouldn't they rather spend that money on helping the kids up front instead of spending a bunch of money on lawyers? Because attorneys are expensive. I don't know, let's say $3,000. Let's say my attorney got $3,000. I don't know exactly, but let's say $3,000. How much more, right, yeah, I think it's more too. But let's say $3,000. How much money in aides who are only getting paid a little bit more than the wage could they have paid for that $3,000? Times that by how many lawsuits they had that day. They could pay for a lot of aides. Second thing is the cities have, or at least the city of Chino has a surplus of money. Now, we can help advocate for that, but who's really supposed to advocate for that is the superintendent of schools and the board. And there's the same people when you go to say, we don't have any money. But wait, your job as a superintendent, and it's literally written on the websites and everything, is to get money for these kids. Your job is that. That's what you get paid money for. We vote you in, that's your job. And you're saying you don't have enough money. Whose problem is that? Well, all of ours. So we all need to help together. But in general, their job is to look for the money. Go find the money. Give me the money. Find the money. But in general, if they have money for lawsuits, they should have money. Like if you look at Peter Atwood, who's a big advocate, his thing he always says in all his things is, I am taking this to the federal level because you guys can literally just pay this little small amount, but now you're going to pay this big giant amount so that I can show to the world that if you would have just spent a couple hundred here, you would have saved thousands to millions here. So just help the kids. That's Next slide. I just like doing that for fun. Great. So basically, we need, ultimately, we need a larger budget for special education. We need to go to the school board, go to the city council. I don't know why the things are cut off. I think it's because it was 2 o'clock in the morning when I did this slide. And ultimately, we need to go and tell them we need more money for special education, but also we need them to spend the money wisely. So they do have money. So they need to spend it better. And it would be great if to have a parent group of people, maybe us, to help them, to work with them, to decide where the money should go. Because having one person at a director level deciding where the money goes, doesn't seem to be working well. So I'm not saying we could be more an advisory council or whatever, but like we need something more than just no power and we have to get an attorney just to get the help we need. Next slide, and I think this might be the end. I can't remember now. Oh, there it is. There's the rest of it. I like how she did this. So this one's just be patient, stand for, advocate for all. So ultimately what everybody's been saying here, we need to advocate for our kids, we need to advocate for special education, and if you don't advocate at least for your kid, you're going to end up with 20